We are bearing witness to something in Cuba that my parents never got to see. The people of Cuba are crying out for freedom, and we must hear them. The steps taken thus far by the Biden administration are important, but we must do more.
That was New Jersey Democrat Senator Bob Menendez on the Senate floor yesterday. He's calling on the U.S. and the international community to do more to answer the Cuban people's calls for freedom from the communist regime. Senator Menendez joins me now, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, it's good to see you. Just yesterday, a resolution passed unanimously out of the committee reaffirming congressional support for Cuba's freedom. What are you asking for?
Well, Jose, good to be with you. And first, that resolution was bipartisan. It is bicameral. The House has the same resolution. It passed unanimously out of the committee. It condemns the regime in Cuba for its violence against peaceful protesters, expresses solidarity with them, and makes an international call for solidarity with the Cuban people, which I'm glad to see today after I mentioned them in my speech yesterday, that the European Union just issued a statement that is largely in solidarity with the Cuban people. That's a significant move. I want to see internet connectivity for the people of Cuba. I believe the Biden administration is actively pursuing what's the best technological means to achieve that with the minimum opportunity for the regime to block it. I want to see more sanctions. The president did levy some global Magnitsky sanctions against the Black Berets, which is the part of the oppressive security system inside of Cuba, against peaceful protesters, and also at the generals, the head of the Cuban military. I think more can be done in that regard. I appreciate the administration got 20 countries in the world to express their solidarity with the Cuban people, including countries that never before have. We need to build upon that. And I also think the administration needs to have a new executive order that directly focuses on the regime and those who provide material support to it.
In your speech yesterday, you highlighted some of the hundreds of political prisoners taken just since the 11th of July, including the leader of the San Isidro movement. What can anyone do to see change there?
Well, you know, when the world casts a garish light on the regime's oppressions of peaceful protesters, when the world shows that Afro-Cubans are at the center of the protests against the regime, a regime who used to claim that they elevated the life of Afro-Cubans inside of Cuba, but for which there's none virtually in their leadership. When we, in fact, internationalize the sanctions against the regime, not against the Cuban people, but against the regime, so that the regime cannot continue to live the life of luxury on the backs of Cuban people who have no food on the shelves, then that type of pressure creates an opportunity for change. And it is my hope that we will see those types of actions across the globe and certainly in the Western Hemisphere. And then finally, I think when people adopt the cause of leaders of, for example, the San Isidro movement in the arts and entertainment, as they have in other parts of the world, that becomes an incredible ripple effect across the globe. So those are some of the things I want to continue to try to make happen, and I want to see happen.
There are a lot of Václav Havels in Cuba. It's got to underline those. You, Senator, and other issues, you and other members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus will meet with President Biden in a matter of hours about the legalization of DACA and other undocumented immigrant groups. How do you convince your colleagues that it's critically important?
Well, look, you know, recent reports, as well as the last time we passed comprehensive immigration reform in the Senate, which I was part of as the Gang of Eight with the late John McCain, made very clearly compelling economic cases, well over, you know, $1.5 trillion in economic growth, enormous contributions to the Social Security Trust Fund, raising the wages of all Americans, not just undocumented ones, and the constant sacrifice that essential workers are providing, as they did at the height of the pandemic When we were all told to stay home by the health authorities, they were risking their lives. Many of them lost their lives in order for the food supply. So these arguments, I think, will be compelling, whether on the economic side, whether on the security side, or just on the moral standing as well.
Senator, I'm just thinking about that Gang of Eight. That was the last real major push for comprehensive immigration reform that unfortunately didn't get anywhere. Should have been discussed at least, right? But with this issue being so acceptable and popular across the board, immigration reform in the United States, why is it that there is no new Gang of Eight? Why is it that there's no real movement in the Senate or the House to get something comprehensive passed?
Well, just a moment on the Gang of Eight. You know, we did pass it in the Senate with 67 votes. Unfortunately, Speaker Boehner never gave it a vote in the House of Representatives. And I think if he had, it would have passed, and we'd be totally different today in terms of country and talking about immigration. I think the problem has been President Trump. He has made immigration his singular issue. He has created all of the nefarious commentary about immigration. Every time we talk about reform, which means you have to earn your way, make yourself right with the government, go to a criminal background check, pay your taxes, do other things as well, they call it amnesty. And for so long as any effort to try to find a pathway for legalization that would have an enormous economic input, that would reunify families, that would add greater vitality to the American nation and security, because I want to know who's here to pursue the American dream versus who might be here to do it harm. But I can't know that unless I bring millions of people out of the shadows into the light. It's this call constantly suggesting amnesty. Amnesty is when you get something for nothing. We're not saying that. People are going to have to do things to make themselves right with the law, but they should be given that opportunity in the interest of the American nation.
And, Senator, quickly about that key bipartisan infrastructure vote from last night. It means debate can start, but do you feel confident you'll have a bill written, agreed to, and ready to vote on by the August recess? And if not, are you all willing to stay through the recess to get it done?
Well, Leader Schumer has made it clear we're staying here this weekend. He said we're staying here throughout next week and beyond. There are two things that we have to get done. Is this infrastructure bill, which is incredibly important to the nation. China is spending huge amounts of money in its infrastructure. It knows that it needs to do so to be economically competitive in the world. We're living off the greatest generation's investments, and we haven't built upon it. So, yes. And secondly, we need to get a budget resolutions passed so that we can then deal with reconciliation in September. So the answer is we're staying here to work. We are on a path to make it happen. And I just hope that Senator McConnell and his past comments about seeing Joe Biden fail is not the watermark of what they're trying to imprint as we move forward. If there's goodwill, there is legislation to pass and an opportunity to make something happen.
Senator Bob Menendez, it's a pleasure to see you. Thank you for being with me this morning.
David.